The world loves spice. The exotic ingredients in so many of our favourite dishes have revolutionised the way we eat. But the search for these amazing tastes now found in every kitchen cupboard changed the course of history. This is a journey to find out how spices shaped our modern world. I'm going to be visiting some of their exotic birthplaces and travelling the globe to discover just how these spices made it to our tables. I'll be meeting the people whose lives depend on them and following the trail of the first spice explorers.
Empires built and destroyed, immense fortunes made, and countless lives lost during one of the most exciting periods of discovery in the history of the Western world, and all in the name of spice.
There are two spices that push the boundaries of exploration further than they had ever been pushed before. They redrew the world map and sparked a war of horrifying brutality in one of the remotest corners of the earth. These spices were cloves and nutmeg. In 16th century Europe, these spices were treasured as exotic foods and medicine, thought to ward off the plague. But they were also the ultimate status symbol, a kind of medieval bling. A small sack of nutmeg like this could buy a grand house in London. But the problem back then was finding these spices. The only source of nutmeg and cloves was on a tiny cluster of remote islands surrounded by treacherous seas on the other side of the world. Their mysterious and far-flung location accounted for their astronomical price. I'm heading east to find the home of these spices, a mere speck within the archipelago of 17,000 islands we now call Indonesia. I'm starting on the island of Java. Its capital, Jakarta, was an important hub for those searching for the route to the Spice Islands. Even with modern-day transport, there's no direct, reliable way of getting there, so I'm going for the more traditional option.
Hi.
Hi. Yes.
This boat will follow the trail of the Europeans to eastern Indonesia and the Banda Islands. In the 17th century, two European nations entered the spice race with a vengeance: the Dutch and the English. Both nations set up private companies to search for spice. Both wanted the fame of finding the islands, but more importantly, the enormous fortune that securing the monopoly on trade in this region would bring. These maverick merchants were heavily armed and ready to kill any rivals who stood in their way. But they still needed the help of the locals because they were the only ones who knew the exact location of the islands the Europeans wanted so badly to find. So they would have done the journey with a
series of local pilots all asking for enormous amounts of money, and who can blame them? It is an astonishing skill, I think, navigation by the stars. Which way? This way?
Yeah, starboard.
Starboard. Okay.
Starboard side. Compass.
In the spring of 1599, it was the Dutch that beat the English to this archipelago of 10 tiny volcanic islands. After a long and treacherous journey, they had finally found the land where gold grew on trees.
It was the search for these very islands, and most importantly the trees that grow on them, that inspired people to take these crazy journeys and to risk their lives and their fortunes. These are the Banda Islands, and that is Gunung Api. It means fire mountain, and it is a volcano, and very often crews reported that when they arrived here it was belching fire and smoke, and they must have wondered, have we really arrived in heaven, or is this going to be hell?
The eruption of the volcano was not the only thing to greet the Dutch on arrival. All foreign visitors to these lands would have been welcomed by a flotilla of Kora canoes. Nowadays, teams from neighbouring islands race each other in an impressive show of strength and stamina. Even the friendly display with which they greeted me was, well, a little intimidating. It must have been even more so for those early Europeans who would never have seen anything like it before. This is Banda Neira, the capital of the Banda Islands, and it's where the Dutch discovered the source of their precious nutmeg, a secret closely guarded by Arab and Asian traders for centuries. Today, these islands produce up to 500 tons of nutmeg a year.
Look at these trees.
You see this nutmeg, many fruit, and this you see these flowers, this you see this nutmeg, and everything fruits.
Everything. There's nutmeg everywhere you look.
You must know, for nutmeg.
Bapa Usman is a fifth-generation nutmeg farmer who has a large orchard of over 200 trees.
I can bring you for nutmeg. Open the trees,
goodness,
you can see.
look.
Yeah. This you see, this nutmeg. Open the trees.
So this is the ripe nutmeg.
Yes.
And can you use this part of the fruit? Can you use that for anything?
This fruit for jam.
Aha.
Syrup and nutmeg candy.
Nutmeg candy.
Nutmeg candy. And you can see this.
The red inside, yeah?
Yeah, you see red,
Yeah.
This red, maize.
That's the maize. So that's like the casing that goes around the nutmeg.
Also for cosmetic.
For cosmetic.
Yes.
The maize.
Maize. The
Wow,
maize.
okay.
Yeah. Inside maize, nutmeg.
That's the nutmeg.
And for nutmeg, this for cooking, for medicine, and I don't know for what
For everything.
Dutch, England, 100 years before come to Banda for what? For nutmeg.
It made them a fortune.
Many money.
Many money. Yeah. And you
And
have 200 trees.
I not money.
So show me how it works.
Usman is an exception to the rule here because he actually owns the land his trees grow on, but he has to pay a hefty 30% tax to the government for the privilege.
You see this open, eh?
Yeah.
I think. Open?
Yeah.
Yes, I think. Ah.
Can I try?
Yes, you like try,
I
okay,
want to
but
try
you
it.
must stick open. Eh? If
Only
not
open.
I don't like.
Okay. Is this right, Usman?
Okay. Where?
Where? You've taken all the open
Where
ones.
open?
You didn't
I
give
don't
me a
see
chance.
more.
You don't see any more? Oh, hang on, I
Why?
think I've got it.
Stick.
Yeah, so a pull.
Okay.
Pull.
Okay.
Yay! Okay, let's see what we got.
This I give for camera.
Mine was only little.
Very small.
But yours, look at yours.
Yeah.
They're magnificent. Here we are. So
Yeah.
it's like a jewel.
Oh.
It's like opening a jewel box. Look at this. It's beautiful.
Slowly.
I'm doing very slowly. How do I take it off here? Just
Open. Open
oh,
some
like that.
flower. Yeah.
Just peel it off.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's the mace. And look at your beautiful Banda nutmeg.
This nutmeg, you see this black. Eh? This for mice, you see red.
The red. And then this is for the jam.
For jam, for syrup, for nutmeg candy. Yeah.
Getting this now.
Nutmeg is a finicky little plant which requires specific conditions to grow, and these islands provide all it needs. It likes warm, humid weather, well-drained, fertile soil, and an annual rainfall of more than 150 centimetres. The rich volcanic soil, hot sun, and frequent downpours here in the Banda Islands produce what many people still consider to be the highest quality of all the world's nutmeg. Once the nutmeg is picked, there's a lot of hard work still to be done before it's ready for market.
Salamat sore.
During harvest season, the women of Banda get together to separate the fruit, the mace and the nutmeg whilst catching up on all the local gossip and having a bit of a laugh.
And that just like that. You can eat like that? Raw? No, I've got this one.
Asam.
Oh my God. Do you always open? And then that is pala.
Yeah.
Pala. Right.
Then I made a discovery. The women told me that what I thought was nutmeg was actually the shiny outer casing, a third layer hiding the true prize.
Okay, so hang on a second. What seems to happen then is you've got these multi-layers. You've got the outside, the mace, then you've got the kind of shell, and inside the shell sits the nutmeg. It's amazing, isn't it, that this funny little wrinkly thing was worth indescribable amounts of money and made all those mad men sail all the way around the world. So it's really interesting because it seems like after the Dutch came here and turned everything into nutmeg farms, it really has gone back to the old style. So all the women here have the pala trees in the mountain, that's right, yeah? So everyone has their trees, they go and collect the nutmeg. And how many trees do you have?
100 pohon, 150.
150 trees. That's a lot of trees.
But even 150 trees are not enough to sustain a family, which is why most people have other jobs and why we have to work flat out.
She's telling me that if I continue to work so slowly, she's going to cut my salary. We haven't even discussed my salary yet. Minika. Married. Oh, am I married? This? Yes. Yeah. Poor man. And you have baby? Me? No. You 4. You have Lima. 5 children. How do you sleep?
It's been a fun, noisy morning and an insight for me into the importance of nutmeg to the families of Banda today.
Everything finished? Finish?
But the story of nutmeg is not all smiles. It's a dark tale with a brutal ending. There is evidence of the Dutch colonists all around the island and of the Dutch East India Company, known as the VOC. It was one of the world's first corporate empires, and its initials soon became a symbol of fear and hatred for the people of Banda. When you wander around here, all the colonial architecture is Dutch. It looks pretty, but the Dutch legacy is one of horror. The most fearsome Dutch governor was a man who arrived here in 1607. His name was Jan Pietersen Cohen, and his reign heralded an era of Dutch brutality that started with the mass murder of all the tribal chiefs of this very island. In 1621, Governor Cohen hired Japanese mercenaries to execute the island chiefs known as the Orang Kaya. Their bodies were impaled on bamboo poles as a warning to anyone who dared oppose him. This was the beginning of his master plan of domination by extermination, a form of systematic genocide. By the end of the massacre, the population was reduced from 15,000 to just 1,000 people. And then Governor Cohen repopulated the island with slave workers from Java. All in the name of nutmeg. It's a story that's still fresh in the minds of the people of Banda. Some of the massacred chiefs are buried here. 2 of Banda's leaders, Hamdi and Pakdula, are on a rare visit to this sacred site. The people of the village want to start preparing the rituals they perform to honour the dead chiefs, but first they need to ask permission from the ancestors. Can you tell me why the people of Banda today are so determined to remember the massacre?
This is our memorial, yeah, from long time ago. And then we still remember the Jan Pietersen Cohen. They killed 44 Orang Kaya, 10,000 people. Banda. In Holland, they said Jan Pietersen is hero. They bring a lot of gold, but our Bandanese said he's the bad man. He's terrorist, penjahat. Yeah.
In the village of Ratu, everyone is getting ready for the performance of a dance called the Chakalele. It's a centuries-old ritual to keep the memory of the murdered chiefs alive. After the massacre, the Dutch restricted the Bandanese army numbers to just 5. These young men represent what was left of their ravaged army. Every single item of this eclectic costume is connected to the trade in nutmeg. The helmets, a gift from Europe. The textiles, from Indian traders. And these gold flowers in their mouths are a symbol of how the Bandanese were left without a voice. Today, the islanders have regained their voice and also some control over their nutmeg. These predominantly Muslim islands are ruled from Jakarta, and the government has returned the nutmeg trees to the Bandanese people. But the islanders are still campaigning to regain full control of their land as well. I've come to one of the oldest nutmeg forests on the island. Some of the trees in this former Dutch plantation date back hundreds of years to the time of the Dutch masters. After the massacre of the tribal chiefs, and indeed most of the population of Banda, Governor-General Cohen set about turning the islands into a giant series of nutmeg farms, run by imported slaves and overseen by ruthless Dutch masters. This glorious, wild-looking forest was one of those plantations, and the reason I can say that with such confidence is this magnificent tree. It's a wild almond, and the Dutch planted these to shade the nutmeg trees. Oh, there's one. There's this huge pigeon that lives on these islands, massive thing with dark green wings. There it goes. Gorgeous birds. And they eat the wild almonds. They're also partial to a spot of nutmeg. And their droppings scatter the nutmeg seeds all over this forest. So it's a very, very important spreader of these all-important trees, and are responsible for probably planting more trees than any English, Dutch or Bandanese farmers have ever. More than 200 years ago, European traders smuggled lucrative nutmeg seedlings off the islands. They were spread around the world and grown in tropical regions like the Caribbean and India. As a result, Banda lost its monopoly on nutmeg, and the price plummeted. Today, the industry in Banda is just enough to keep the locals going, and even the children join in by foraging for windfalls. It's like a nutmeg treasure hunt, isn't it? No good. It's green. I'm learning. How about that one? But that's a good one, isn't it? A good one? No? Maybe? No good? No, that's a rubbish one. No. Look what I found. Look. It's mine. It's mine. Look. Surely do I get the thumbs up for that one? Look at that one. Is that good? Oh, and you just trumped me with an almond. You can eat that one. Can you? Shall I try? I don't know whether it's just come out of a pigeon's bum though. Just when I found my perfect nutmeg, I get trumped by the perfect almond. Those pigeons know what they're doing. Up to now, I've been on the main Banda Islands that were occupied by the Dutch. But there was one piece of nutmeg real estate the Dutch hadn't seized. A tiny island taken over by their bitter rivals, the English. Now, the English were in this part of the world for the same reason as the Dutch, to make a fortune from nutmeg. They set up a company to rival the VOC, the English East India Company, which was to become the engine that launched the British Empire. And this was their first target, 10 miles west of Banda. This almost inaccessible speck in the ocean, 2 miles by half a mile wide, was to become the first ever English colony, the island of Roon.
You have no idea how lucky we are. This stretch of sea can be absolutely brutal. And you can see it's low tide at the moment because this bit of land is very exposed and there are waves breaking on that reef, and reefs surround this whole island, and it was the ruin of many an English ship.
The man the company chose to win this island for the crown was an unlikely hero. Captain Nathaniel Courthope was a swashbuckling, fearless adventurer and also a bit of a thief. He'd purloined £600 from the company, been punished for the crime, and was ready to redeem himself on the island of Roon. When Captain Courthope arrived in 1616, he was warned to heed the following advice.
At your arrival at Roon, show yourself courteous and affable, for they are a peevish, perverse, diffident and perfidious people, and apt to take disgust upon small occasions, and are, being moved, more cumbersome than wasps. Wow, I'm looking forward to this welcome. It's so shallow here, we're having to watch for the reef. You're going to try go round that way and then hit the beach. All sand here by the looks of things, so we should be pretty good. Salamat pagi! Well done.
Welcome to Manhattan.
Ah, thank you. What a welcome.
Today, I found the reception to this particular English visitor anything but peevish and diffident. Captain Courthope's negotiations with the locals in broken English and sign language were to change the course of history. By offering them protection against the hated Dutch, he persuaded them to hand over control of the island to the English crown. When news reached King James, he was so ecstatic that he changed his title to King of England, Scotland, Ireland and Roon.
So
You are the leader.
Yeah,
You're
the leader.
very young.
Yeah.
I feel very honoured.
So England in Roon is very famous.
Very famous.
Yes, and then they can pack with the people in Roon Island.
Aha.
The pact with the islanders gave England an exclusive export deal with Roon. Courthope set up plantations and filled flotillas of ships with nutmeg, which went directly to England. All this happened under the noses of the infuriated Dutch, and they set out on a 4-year campaign of ferocious battles to destroy Courthope. In the end, the Dutch tricked Captain Courthope into an ambush at sea. He fought for his life, but he was outgunned and outmanned, and finally he was shot. The story goes that he threw himself overboard and was never seen again. The English thorn in the Dutch side was finally removed.
There's little sign that the English were ever here. I mean, there's these few crumbling, rather unloved ruins, but there's no monument. There's nothing that remembers Courthope's brave but futile stand against the Dutch.
But neither is there a memorial to the many islanders who died in a bitter battle between two foreign nations to control the trade of Roon's nutmeg. With Courthope out of the way, the Dutch were now totally in control of the nutmeg trade. But the story doesn't end there. To uncover the next chapter, I need to travel 100 miles across the Banda Sea to the seat of Dutch power in the 17th century, the island of Ambon. Despite their stranglehold on the region and the trade, the Dutch were obsessed with the idea that someone, somewhere, was plotting to oust them. These crumbling walls are all that remain of the once mighty Dutch fort, where many of the Dutch bigwigs hold up, protected by heavily armed soldiers. A handful of Englishmen also lived on the island.
At the time, it numbered just 18, a motley band of merchants and sailors. There was a barber and a tailor. They were all utterly broke and desperate to leave. So they were hardly a threat to anyone. Yet such was the Dutch paranoia that they believed that this little band of bankrupts had a conspiracy to overthrow them.
So the Dutch governor had them thrown in chains, horribly tortured for many days, until they confessed to a conspiracy none of them had any notion of.
And in early 1623, every single one of them was beheaded in front of a baying crowd. Governor General Cohen's master plan of domination by extermination was well on track.
Finally, to add insult to injury, the Dutch sent the English the bill for the cost of the blood-stained velvet from the executioner's block. After the massacre at the fort, it was all-out war between the Dutch and the English, and the locals were stuck in the middle. Today, Ambon is a busy seaport where residents enjoy all the trappings of modern life whilst retaining strong links to the island's past. At the height of Dutch rule, any rebellious islanders who dared to resist were tortured and many were executed. The memory of this brutality is still an open wound and is remembered by the Ambonese today.
So we were walking through Ambon and heard all this kerfuffle. So obviously had to come and look.
This is the ancient ritual called beating brooms. Two teams of men, both armed with strips of palm leaves, compete against each other.
Oh my God. This wasn't quite the jolly sort of exotic festival I was expecting.
It looks indescribably brutal, but it's actually a show of brotherhood, as all the men in the village have come together to test their ability to withstand pain.
Possibly the most disturbing thing I've ever witnessed. Actually making me feel quite sick. So is the man that has the most wounds, he's the strongest?
Stronger.
He gets the best girlfriend?
Yes. Oh, very best girl.
The Dutch controlled the nutmeg trade here until the middle of the 17th century, but they hadn't bargained on the resilience of the local people. And it's that gave them the patience to bide their time until they could once again take control of their nutmeg. The final chapter in our story of nutmeg is taking me back to England's first colony, that tiny island of Roon. Unlikely though it seems, it was from here that a huge shift in global power was about to begin. In 1620, after the death of Captain Courthope, England lost this nutmeg-rich island to Holland. Almost 50 years passed before England's King Charles II took his revenge.
He sent a fleet across the Atlantic in retaliation and took a Dutch-held island called New Amsterdam. 2 years later, the two sides got together to try and establish some sort of peace, but it looked impossible. The English were demanding Roon back, the Dutch were categorically refusing, and it looked like deadlock until one bright spark said, "Look, why don't you just hang on to the islands you already have?" So the English reluctantly said, "OK, we'll keep New Amsterdam, you, the Dutch, can have Roon." And so that's what they did. The English turned their backs on the Spice Islands, renamed New Amsterdam New York, and a whole new period of colonization began.
While the English may have focused their attentions on another part of the globe, the Spice Islands remained a highly desirable target for other European powers. Early spice explorers didn't come all this way just for one spice. They also came in search of the other most highly desired spice of the time, the equally exotic companion to nutmeg, cloves. It was treasured for its flavour and as a wonder drug, and even as an aphrodisiac. To find out more about this spice, I'm heading 300 miles north and across the equator to the original home of cloves, the island of Ternate. The story of the European quest for this spice starts even earlier than nutmeg, but it was fueled by the same ambition: to cut out Arab and Asian middlemen and control the source of the spice itself. And the first explorers to this part of Indonesia were not the Dutch, it was the Portuguese. When they arrived here, they found ancient kingdoms at war with one another. The Portuguese had come for cloves and the rival kingdoms wanted weapons. It was a perfect match.
Ternate is one of a string of volcanic islands that used to be the only places on Earth where you could find cloves. Each one is ruled by a sultan, and rivalry between the main islands, Ternate, and its near neighbour, Tidore, was and remains fierce. So when the Europeans first arrived, the Portuguese, both sultanates were keen to get them on side, because an alliance with these rich, well-armed strangers would give them the upper hand. It was the Sultan of Ternate who won the day and the Portuguese trade, and gave them the monopoly over cloves for over half a century.
The intense, nose-tickling aroma of cloves pervades everything. These little black twigs are actually the dried flower buds from the clove trees. It feels like the entire island is made of cloves. In the 16th century, Ternate was the most prosperous trading port in the whole of Indonesia. And the Sultan was hugely powerful. Europeans arrived with weapons and luxury trinkets in the hope of winning his favour. Even today, nobody does anything on this island without the permission of the Sultan.
Now, I don't have any cannons or armour or fancy goods to trade, but if I'm going to get under the skin of this island, I need to request an audience from the Sultan in there.
When the early European traders arrived, protocol demanded they present themselves to the Sultan before any negotiations could begin. Today, I've secured an invitation to the palace so that I can do the same.
Crikey, I wasn't expecting this. So if I was a Portuguese or a Dutch or an English trader, I would be feeling a little overwhelmed by now.
Before I enter the palace, it's been suggested, nicely but firmly, that I change into something more suitable to meet a king.
And I definitely wasn't expecting this. It's quite difficult to turn in a collar like this. I know what Elvis must have felt like.
Ternate has the longest surviving Islamic sultanate in the whole of Indonesia. Sultan Mudaffar is the 48th sultan in a line that extends back over 800 years.
Mrs. Kate Hebel untuk mengambil tempat. We would like to invite Mrs. Kate Hebel. Will you please take position?
The Sultan has decided to award me one of his highest honours and adopt me as an honorary citizen of Ternate. But then the Queen gives me a sash emblazoned with the word princess. Not just a citizen, I'm now royalty.
Congratulations to be the Princess Ternate. Congratulations.
Mrs. Kate, humble lan modadi ka Princess Sultanate of Ternate. Naterima?
Terima.
Nga naterima?
Terima.
Naterima?
Terima.
Coba ngon terima raima. No isa. Tumabanga hati lamo ruka semubia idumahan. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin.
With my new title comes certain responsibilities. I'm now an emissary of cloves for Ternate to the world.
Should I now be something of like an ambassador for Ternate back in my own country?
Like an ambassador.
Okay, well I shall make sure that I do nothing to bring the good name into disrepute.
But I didn't come here to dress in sequins and hobnob with royalty. I'm here to see exactly what drew the European explorers to Ternate in the first place. The Sultan gave me an introduction to one of his courtiers, Venera Yusman, whose family have been farming cloves for generations. They live at the foot of Mount Gamalama.
Walking through the woods here is like walking through the exotic section of a supermarket. Pala, nutmeg, there are papaya trees, there are clove trees, banana, cocoa. Drink it.
Ini kayu manis. Kayu manis, kayu manis.
Kayu manis.
Yeah.
So the guys come up to their trees on the slopes of the volcano, and it was about, I would say, a good hour and a half. Really steep climb. And then their working day begins. Yeah?
Yeah.
Look at them. They're so pretty. They're like sort of, I don't know, kind of candelabras or something.
The aromatic shade of these majestic trees is the perfect place to escape the scorching heat of the day. The flowers must be picked before they blossom. It's when the buds are beginning to turn pink that they have the most fragrance.
It's amazingly labour-intensive. Valera and I are doing the beginners picking, the lower branches, but they pick from right up at the top.
This traditional method of harvesting cloves hasn't changed since the time of the Portuguese. It involves a complicated matrix of ropework and branch pulling to dislodge the topmost flowers and reach the buds on the furthest away branches. Back in the village, everyone pitches in with the next stage of the clove harvest.
Basically, we are stealing the cloves, and that's the sort of local phrase for doing this, for separating the cloves from the stalks. You kind of pinch the stalks together, and then you put them in your hand and snap them back, and that breaks all the cloves off the stalk. And the cloves go in one pile, and the stalks go in another. We have a walnut tree at home. It had the most fantastic crop of walnuts this year. So just before I came to Indonesia, we picked a whole load and pickled them. And one of the things that you use in pickling walnuts is cloves. But I just had no idea of the amount of labour involved in getting one little clove. It's funny, isn't it? I mean, they've become so ordinary to us, and yet when you see it like this, and you see that an entire family, an entire community's lives rely on the little things that I was sticking in my walnut pickle, just makes you appreciate them a little bit more.
Aibom capile pulo do daga. Aibom capile pulo do daga. Pulo do daga mayam yam te oromega pinyota jo.
Everywhere I walk around this island, I come across cloves lining the streets, drying in the sun.
This is one sack of cloves. I think they weigh about 20 kilos. And it took all of us, what were there, 5 or 6 of us? Just about an hour. Quite satisfying though.
Jemur begini selama 3 hari, terus kering.
3 days in the sun. Okay, so this will lie here for 3 days.
As well as the buds, the clove stalks are in demand, and their most prominent use is in one of Indonesia's biggest industries. The #1 use for cloves today is to flavour cigarettes. Crushed clove stalks are mixed with tobacco to create the hugely popular Kretek cigarette. It's such a massive business that multinationals like Marlboro are now part of this lucrative trade.
Watching these women work is absolutely dizzying. I mean, it looks almost like I'm seeing them sort of speed it up 10 times, but that's actually the speed that they're working. Lisa's been working here for 16 years, and like all the other women on this factory floor, she'll roll about 400 cigarettes in 1 hour. And one little fact I found out is not a single one of these women smoke. I sort of want to have a go, and I sort of really don't. I haven't rolled a cigarette for 6 years at least. A bit more? Like that? So push it in like that. And then down. Stop. These women have 3 months of training to be able to do this. What am I doing wrong now? Even with your help, it's a disaster. And Let's try another one.
Jangan dilepas.
Okay, let's try again. Come on, please work, please work. Aha! What do you think, Inspector? Go on, fit in the special hole. Yeah!
Despite the fact that most of the country's clove crop goes up in smoke, Indonesia is still one of the largest producers of cloves in the world. And it's now a global trade whose roots go all the way back to the Portuguese adventurers who changed it forever. When they came here, they enjoyed several years of good business dealings with the locals. But then they turned nasty and demanded total domination. It was from this Portuguese fort that a series of horrifying events took place. And it started when the Portuguese kidnapped the Sultan.
So in 1570, they killed him. Now, as you can imagine, the islanders were up in arms. They rushed to this fort, but they couldn't take the Portuguese on at war because the Portuguese had guns and they didn't. So instead, the Ternatians blocked off all the exits to the fort, and the Portuguese were under siege for 5 years. Finally, starvation forced them to surrender.
It was the end of the Portuguese stranglehold here in Ternate. In a village near the palace, young children are learning a war dance. The Sultan's head of music is Atta Hassan Ali. He is teaching them the Soya Soya dance.
Soya Soya sih tarian waktu mereka mengingat waktu mengambil Sultan Khairul dibunuh oleh Portugis pada tahun 1577. Waktu Portugis di sini memang kita sangat marah karena mereka merampas hak-hak kita. Jadi biarlah itu terjadi, kita ambil baik-baiknya saja.
By the late 1500s, after the murder of the Sultan and their embarrassing forced surrender, Portuguese influence dwindled. The new Sultan was only too willing to woo another foreign power to his shores. So who stepped into the breach?
It was the Dutch that took over the clove trade from the Portuguese.
The Dutch arrived here in May 1599, eager to take over another highly lucrative trade, but in a highly unorthodox way. Cloves also grew on the Dutch-controlled island of Ambon. To dominate the market, they decided to limit it, therefore pushing up the price in Europe. Ambon would keep its cloves, but every single tree on Ternate would be destroyed.
Now, obviously, the Sultan wouldn't have let them just cut the trees down, so they had to be a little bit sneaky about it. They told the people of Ternate that the Europeans didn't want cloves anymore. They wanted whole branches, and then they wanted bark, and then they wanted the roots, so that one by one, the clove trees of Ternate started to die. Apart from this one, which was a little sapling being kept in the Sultan's palace. And even today, it sort of serves as an arboreal up yours to the colonizers, because the Dutch aren't here, and cloves most certainly are.
Ternatians believe that every single clove tree on the island descends from this very tree. Being here during the harvest month, I've seen how cloves permeate every aspect of daily life. The women of the village are preparing a special Thanksgiving meal called salamat an.
I've been placed on coconut duty. This is the most fantastic tool. Am I doing this right? Yeah? It's good? This is what we needed when we won coconuts on the coconut shy and then had no idea how to get at the things. Yeah? Chenke. These?
And of course, cloves play a central part in this feast. They're mixed with the coconut to create a delicious rice dish.
You want... So they must go in there? Everything? Like that? Oh, like that. White rice, and I think there might be some lemongrass. No one is going to go hungry today. Like that. Let's see if mine worked. Yeah! Can I try one? It looks like the volcano, doesn't it? Looks like the volcano out here, like this. Yeah. It's rice sculpture. It's amazing.
Ini rakyat, nanti ini seperti Pak Sultan.
Okay. So this one is a symbol of the people, and this is the symbol of the Sultan.
My time in Indonesia is almost over. It's been an emotional and sometimes horrifying journey, but all along I've been welcomed and given a glimpse into how nutmeg and cloves continue to shape the lives of the people here. And I've become a princess. I didn't get to keep the outfit though. It's astonishing to think that these tiny islands that barely feature on the map and their spices, which are now found on every supermarket shelf, have had such a major impact on world history and global trade. Yet today they remain as remote and exotic as they were half a millennium ago.
Exploring our human planet with a visit to the River Peoples here on BBC HD tonight at 11. But first it's EastEnders coming up next.